This is the March 25th, 2025 meeting of the Comprehensive Plan Task Force. I'm Al LeGros. And what we typically do here is go around and introduce members of the task force. And I'd like to start with this very distinguished member on my left here.
Brian Hurst.
George Prince.
Dave Brown.
And Al LeGros.
Matt Gilly.
Bob Eaton.
All right, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to recognize the fact that we have a person here who has a different role on our task force, a new select board electee, Matt Gilly, who was a member of the task force and now is the select board liaison. In that capacity, he is going to provide feedback to the select board, to the other selectmen, but also has voting privileges on this task force. And I see one other person coming in here, and you can come up. Because you're late, you're going to come up here and sit by me.
Thanks, Al.
This is Phil.
From the public hearing on the 22nd.
This is Phil Taylor, who's also a member of the task force. Matt, welcome again in your new capacity here on the task force, and we hope to make this a successful effort. I also want to recognize somebody who's not here, and that's Peter Lieberworth, who was a member of this task force for many years. And Peter and I talked last week. He and his wife have for a while been developing plans to relocate to Massachusetts, which is sort of an interesting trend. But nonetheless, he and his wife are relocating to Massachusetts. They established a residence there a while ago. He put his house on the market, and lo and behold, it sold almost instantaneously. And so he was forced to do relocation types of things much sooner than he thought he would. But I wanted to recognize him. He's been a great asset to this community and to this task force, and we wish him the very best in the future. So, we are here under somewhat unusual circumstances because, as I said, at the beginning of this month, we thought that one way or the other, this task force would either be successful in passing the comprehensive plan, or if the vote turned the other way, not successful. But there was an end, a process, the end was in sight, and then we would move on from there. Turns out that based on what has been provided to me, that this task force and the comprehensive plan vote will actually take place in November. November 4th, I think, is the exact date, in conjunction with state and other election activities. It will be a secret ballot, and so we are looking to that point to try to advance what we have right now. And I think the goal is to look at what we have, which is a great document. There's a lot of good things in here, and say, how can we improve this? How can we make changes such that we can get a successful conclusion to this effort? And I don't have clairvoyant powers, but I am told that there are certain things that really cause concern with a number of people in the community, and we want to talk about some of these things tonight. They're all focused primarily on housing. One is a goal in the housing section on short-term rentals that basically suggested that we try to limit short-term rentals in certain ways. And it's my understanding that that did not go over with a large part of the town. And so the question is, what do we do about that? And I got an email from a member of the Housing Committee, and I know the chair is sitting here right now, Sean Rule, and he can verify whether this is correct or not. The Housing Committee has recommended the following: to eliminate Goal 4 in the housing section, which talks about limiting the use of attainable housing on the conversion of existing year-round housing into seasonal or short-term rental units, completely eliminating that goal. Their recommendation number 1. Recommendation number 2 deals with goal number 7 on page 64, which talks about expanding opportunities for attainable housing. And they're suggesting that we eliminate that goal as well. In addition,
Al, could you explain that? Eliminating goal 7 altogether?
okay, expanding the opportunities for attainable housing. Under the policy sections, expand the potential for the use of existing housing. This is page 64. Expand the potential for the use of existing housing as attainable housing. That's number 1. Policy number 2, expand the potential for the construction of attainable housing. And is that correct?
Yes, is, in our discussion,
Why don't you move that mic over so we can,
Yeah. In our discussion, we felt like this section directly addresses stuff that is also addressed in the housing section and is redundant.
okay, so it's more a redundant issue rather than something that,
That was my impression, Bob or Steve. Do you have?
That it just complicates reference. So we thought it was easy to move it. Bob Goodrow, Housing Committee on. We thought the redundancy didn't help the definition of the Affordable Housing Working Group, and that's what was approved by the Select Board, and this complicated it, so we wanted the Affordable Housing Working Group document to stand on its own, for we think that's a better product, in that instead of some of the controversy that was in the housing section and in section 7, sorry.
Yeah, just to reiterate, this addresses a lot of the same stuff that's mentioned in the comprehensive plans housing section. Having additional things and cross-referencing them across sections is unnecessarily confusing. That was our
okay,
feeling.
okay. So, all right, so, and we've got to go over these things as a task force, but I wanted to kind of lay this out first. The other thing that the Housing Committee recommended was that going back to the goals, where we talk about revise, for example, in goal number 1, policy number 1.3 on page 58, we talk about, under strategies 1.3.1, we talk about revising the basic land use ordinance, revise the basic land use ordinance to allow duplexes, revise the basic land.
Where are you?
We're on page 1-58,
Okay.
policy 1.3.
Okay.
And there are, on strategy 1.3.1, there are a number of entries there that talk about revising ordinances, the basic land use ordinance, to allow attainable occupant, single-family homes, to allow duplexes, to allow townhouses, and so on. What the task force, the Housing Committee is recommending is to say, instead of revise, say consider revising. So in other words, it's not as definitive a statement, but it still allows for the possibility, but the point is to, instead of saying revise it, which is a very definite statement, consider revising, which gives folks the opportunity to discuss, dialogue, and debate these particular issues.
Can I just ask a question? Because we've already got that in the workforce housing, which, so we're not really revising it. They can already be built on smaller lots. So that's something that, appreciate that, but I think closer look at how this language compares to what's already in. As the workforce. Yeah. Yeah, it already allows 20,000 square foot lots. So it's not really revising anything.
You're trying to back off. You're trying to be. You're trying to advise and help. All our trying to do. You were pushy by saying revise. You wanted to make it clear that was.
My only comment is that since it's already in there, that maybe we could take a look at the workforce housing or see how to make this language better so that it actually includes the information that's already in.
Excuse me,
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
but I'm sorry for showing Bob. If we just merely revise that part and say consider revising, does that match your language sufficiently so that we could just leave it as is then?
Just amending to consider.
Yeah.
That's what we had come up with as suggestion, mostly as a clarifying thing that the comprehensive plan is a guiding document.
Yeah.
We are already, like, in the comprehensive plan, revise already means making it more clear to folks that this is, not a directive. We don't have,
Yeah.
there's no.
Not a law.
It's not a mandate.
Work through it.
Yeah.
Not a mandate.
Okay, ladies first.
Okay. I'm stepping back and just thinking of looking at the comprehensive plan, and we know we want to consider attainable housing in some manner. So I guess what I'm saying is I would like to see something in there that tells us to look further into it. In other words, so we're not telling people what's going to happen. But when you get to a point where you're making some ordinance changes, it gives you the opportunity then to study the situation and figure out if that's the way to do what you're trying to achieve. I would hate to just, I think consider's fine, but I feel like we're playing with words here rather than the whole idea.
Would explore work?
Yeah. Yeah. Just something so we don't, well, my personal feeling is we don't forget about it.
Yeah.
Bob?
I just have a question based on substantial amount of confusion, quite frankly. We have said, first of all, the select board said that they rather thought the working group's proposal was quite good. They adopted it, if adoption is the right word, approved it, adopted it, whatever. And we said, we like it too. And by reference, it's included in our plan. And then we proceed to go out and write a whole mess of other stuff. I think it's been pointed out that sometimes it's sort of duplicative. My attitude has always been on all of our work that we should defer to the committees and commissions of this town who work on the particular issue 24/7. Well, maybe not that, but a lot more than we ever can. And I would defer to the working group's product, particularly given the fact the select board rather likes it too. And why can't we just, frankly, get rid of this whole housing section as we've written it? I've got no ego on that and stuff. Summarize in these pages what the working group proposal is, because I think right now people, and I've heard it in the public meeting, says, well, wait now, what's their report? What are you doing? What's their report? There's utter confusion, and we are just compounding it by trying to squeeze two different documents into some comprehensive whole. I think let's go with the one that is more thoughtful.
Thoughts, comments?
I'd be happy to go with the housing committee's recommendation for us right now, which is these two things that were just proposed.
Just a couple of points. For the state to consider this a valid comprehensive plan, we have to address housing.
Sure.
And more recently, the guidance is that we have to address affordable housing. They become much more specific, not just housing in general, but affordable housing. So we're walking a line here because there are a lot of people in town that are concerned about some of the recommendations that have been made relative to smaller houses on smaller lots and the impact that might have on natural resources, water, and so on and so forth. So we have to address housing in some form or fashion. Mm-hmm. And so whether we take this housing section, and by the way, I have not heard any comments from anybody regarding this plan outside of this housing section. That seems to be the nexus of everybody's problems and how that kind of flows out. So,
Can I
you know,
interrupt real quick? about
yes,
that?
yes, sir.
First off, I appreciate that we're digging right into the housing. That's the meat of the problem, right? So I appreciate that. But there is some comments on this here, and there was a few things that I think can be addressed real easily. So sorry to interrupt you, Al, but
Sure.
Water quality and quantity is a big deal. People, I'm hearing that, and I also heard that transportation should be looked at again. There was nothing specific, but it was brought up.
Yeah.
And infrastructure of our roads. I don't really know how to address it. I mean, in my opinion, the town roads are actually pretty good. I mean, we've spent a lot of money on our
Well,
roads.
unfortunately, 123, 24,
Yeah, exactly.
those are all state roads.
Exactly, and I think people are getting that confused, thinking we can actually do something about that at this level. Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay, I appreciate that.
And I will also say, I like the way this dialogue's headed.
Okay.
Much better.
All right. So back to housing, because that is the fundamental issue that I think has a lot of people hung up about approving this plan. And so let's go back to where we started here, short-term rentals. On page 1-59.
Chair,
Sir.
I recognize you're moving on and nobody else has spoken in favor of my idea, so I'm
Okay.
fine with that. I'm fine with that. Just tell me this, where will, in this document, the housing working group's document appear? Will it appear as an annex? Because people have been asking that question, and we don't have it yet here.
Okay, so
just so I know where it
Part
is.
2, there are a number of reports that are earmarked as references.
Mm-hmm.
The housing report is one of those references in part 2.
It'll be in there in the back.
Yes. So, for example, I'm trying to figure out the page here.
Oh, is it in your binder? Because I
It's,
didn't get mine.
it's in the report, it's in part two, under.
That's
ref-
fine, I just wanted to know where,
Under references, and also in the housing section, in the introductory parts of the housing thing, I think the report is referenced
Page 150.
page 154, okay.
That's section
Under attainable
So it's referenced in
Okay.
the
That's
introductory areas of the housing report, as well as in the reports that are specifically called out in the references in the report.
that's fine, I didn't mean to
Where
slow
is it?
things up, that's all I need
Is
to
it under
know.
housing? I'm trying to find it.
Okay, so, this document that I have, and
Yeah.
I got this, okay, my page says 1-56, and I think that coincides with, what's
There it is.
what's put on the town website.
Okay.
And it says basically, attainable housing includes affordable housing, it talks about it. Read the full report on the town website here. And it's a hyperlink. If you click on that, it goes to the website.
Got it,
It goes to that report.
appreciate it.
And then again, in section 2, the report is referenced among a number of things like the Mitchell Field report, the open space report, and other reports that are called out in the document. And so there are two places where that report shows up. So, yes,
Excuse me.
If, just going on the assumption that we take the housing group's recommendations there and eliminate goal 4 and goal 7, if we eliminate goal 7, that was the goal where it references the housing report. So if we eliminate that goal, why do we even have the housing report in the comp plan if we don't reference it at all anymore? And I may be wrong, we may reference it somewhere else. Do we reference it? Are you-
Yeah, it's referenced at the opening of the housing section.
Oh,
There's a
okay.
paragraph in which.
All right, I thought it was.
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, good enough. I just wanted to make sure we weren't putting something in there that we never talked about where,
I mean, the focus of this discussion is, how do we make this plan acceptable to a broader audience in the town? There seems to be a lot of concern about short-term rentals. So let's start with the notion of eliminating Goal 4, which talks about short-term rentals, basically, and ask the task force, do you think we lose anything by eliminating Goal 4 from this plan?
Page is it 59?
The conversion of existing year-round housing into seasonal or short-term rentals. And so, I mean, the initial thought, we're trying to solve an affordable housing issue. And so, when you look at it from that perspective, you want to have as many options as possible available in the town. If you fence off a whole bunch of things as short-term rentals and allow that to increase, the amount of options that are available to people in the town is reduced. It's a math problem. So, that was kind of the logic that led to this in the first place. But we have to recognize that short-term rentals impact a lot of people in the town in terms of the way they make a living and so on and so forth. It impacts potentially tourism and other things. So it's a balancing act. So, and not only that, we have the history of the fact that the short-term rental committee led a very short and bloody life in this town. And so it's probably a smart thing maybe that we eliminate this. And I don't want to say that's my opinion, but I'm asking
That would,
I would agree 110%.
everybody.
I'm not even, I completely missed this. I don't know how this ended up in here. In the 2024 comp plan, which
It
we,
wasn't there.
it was not there, it only went to goal 3, and then all of a sudden now 2025, boom, here it is. And I'm sure you talked about it in the meetings, and so,
Okay, so I think my perspective is that we all agree that we eliminate goal 4. Now, and then if we eliminate goal 4, we have to make sure that in our implementation plan that we eliminate the appropriate areas that support goal 4. So when you eliminate that, we eliminate whatever's in the matrix, if you will, that deals with short-term housing, short-term rentals. Okay. Sir. Yep.
As George spoke, this got by the housing committee as well. And that's why when it got brought up at your pre-comp meeting, the town hall meeting, we were blindsided because we weren't aware of it as well. We had done everything within the Affordable Housing Working Group to eliminate any reference to short-term rental.
Yeah, short-term
in
rental.
general. And hey, it's on us. We missed it because we weren't paying attention to what was going on the other side. And
Yeah.
we apologize for that.
over my head.
Oh, it slipped us.
I'm sure we must have talked about it at some point, but
But I think we're all in unison that there is state legislation down on this, not on our bailiwick.
Yeah, it's a complicated issue. A lot of towns are wrestling with it, and we just,
getting there.
Sounds like we're in violent agreement.
yeah, we're in violent agreement here. Okay, so let's go to the next recommendation that the Housing Committee came forward with, and that's Goal 7, land use, page 164. That has to do with expanding opportunities for attainable housing. And I think what we heard was that the reason for eliminating that was it was kind of redundant. So, anybody have any comments about that? We're not going to lose anything necessarily by eliminating that. It's on page 1-64.
Yeah, that, but you said it's redundant.
Well, when you talk about opportunities for attainable housing, there are other references to providing attainable housing, promoting attainable housing, working with regional partners to address housing needs, and so on. I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
But I'm looking, I'm trying to figure out where it says that.
64.
I'm
64
on
in part 1.
64, but it says
the-
here that this is redundant. So it would seem to me that it must have been mentioned earlier.
It's kind of spread throughout the housing section. Not like a little bit of it might be in goal 1 of the housing section, and a little bit might be in goal 2 of the housing section. Am I correct? So kind of it's spread like there's
I
not
think
one
it's
specific
that
spot.
It's not the specific language that's redundant, it's that affordable housing policies or recommendations are made in other places. But they are different language than this. That make sense?
so I mean, I don't think, I want to make sure that people feel that if we eliminate Goal 7 on page 1-64 of this report, people don't feel like we're losing anything in the report.
We're not eliminating.
We're not eliminating it, right.
We're just not going to.
I think that would go a long way to alleviate a lot of people's concerns.
Okay, well, I'm glad, that's music to my ears. Does task force agree with, okay, so we can eliminate Goal 7. And then the Housing Committee has recommended, as I said before, we have a number of areas under housing, specifically Policy 1-3 on page 1-58. Instead of revise the basic land use ordinance, revise the ordinance to allow duplexes, revise the basic land use ordinance to allow single-family homes. Their recommendation is to say, consider revising. It's not as direct, but it also allows the possibility for that to happen.
So it gives you the opportunity to
George,
study it
59.
further. Decision one way or the other, when you're doing it.
Right. Okay, Bob. I'm reading your, this Bob. I'm reading your beard language there. So what are we talking about? What are you thinking?
I think, my feeling is right now that we shouldn't make this process overly complicated. We should take out anything that seems objectionable. I don't care if 5 people only in the entire town meeting are going to get up and speak against it. Take it out. It's not worth the disunity and confusion and unhappiness it creates by sticking it in. And it doesn't prevent us or respective commissions and committees to pursuing that on their own anyways. I'm all in favor of I like the idea rather than say consider revision, because it's sort of like, just say study. Make it a positive active verb as opposed
All
to
right, okay.
Or explore.
consider
Study.
namby-pamby to me, with all due respect.
All right, so we'll explore the appropriate language. How's that?
Well, let's consider exploring the appropriate language.
Anybody back there have a comment or question? Yes, ma'am.
As a member of the public, I would very much favor explore.
Explore.
Explore covers a vast array.
Okay,
Missing.
okay.
Oh, my name
Now, come on up here to the microphone so we can get it on tape. We want to,
Can we get
we want to be able to track, we want to be able to track you
We could
down.
get somebody walking around with one.
Want to be able to track you down if we have to, and, okay? So introduce yourself, just like the town meeting,
My name is Ann Caldwell. I live on Harpswell Neck.
okay? Okay, and so you're recommending explore, okay. Thank you very much. All right,
Beat a dead horse, Al, but
yes, ma'am.
I will. No, I'm only thinking, I go back to our word cloud, where that's one of the things that's mentioned. So I'm glad that we're at least going to make a statement about it, checking into it further, not that we've forgotten about it.
Right. I mean,
That's all I wanted to mention.
here's the deal, folks.
I know that.
When this whole thing started, almost 4 years ago, there were a lot of people that stood up and said, we're concerned about housing in this town. And that triggered the construction, the development, the start of the Affordable Housing Working Group. And they worked for, what, a year and a half or more? They did surveys, they did public meetings, they did studies, and so on and so forth, and they came up with a report, all based on the premise that housing was an issue in this town. And it is. It's an issue in the town. It's an issue in all the towns around here.
All the country.
And the state mandates that this plan needs to somehow deal with and come up with a way to address housing in this community. And we have unique problems: water, septic, and concerns about natural resources and open space and rural character and so on and so forth. So that's a complicated mix of things. So we need to address this in some form or fashion in this report. What we don't necessarily need to do is prescribe solutions. We can suggest that the town look at things and consider things in the future and do things like that. So that's kind of where we're going here. And what I want to do in the months ahead is to make sure that when this comes up for a vote, that we don't have some mass rebellion a month or so before the report that says this is all BS. That we want to make sure that we're capturing what the town really wants to do, what the majority of the people want to do in the town. That's what this is all about. So I think we're on the right track here, and you know, I appreciate this conversation. Anything else about Goal 4 and Goal 7? We can delete those from what we have here. Yes, sir.
What was the language then that,
What do we end up with?
are we agreed on the language?
Instead of revise, explore,
Explore revising?
Explore
Just
allowing, explore allowing single-family homes restricted to attainable occupancy to be built on smaller lots. I'm on part 1, page 58, right at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
And then explore allowing duplexes restricted to attainable occupancy to be built on smaller lots.
yeah. Explore. Okay, that's great. And of course, we have the chair of the planning board sitting here on my left. And so a lot of the exploring is going to be come in terms of, you know, what the planning board has to do, and the town planner's sitting right back there. So this is there's a process that has to go forward here. And that sounds good to me.
Field trips.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Taking some field trips to explore our options.
Any other comments about short-term rentals?
Was that the only place that was mentioned was Goal 4, I believe, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I
but-
looked and I couldn't find it anywhere else.
Okay, so goal 7, and goal 7, I think we can eliminate that because it's redundant, and that's the recommendation of the Housing Committee. I think that's a good recommendation, and we talked about revising the wording here. I think that makes the housing section hopefully more palatable to people. Okay. The next question has to do with zoning. And
Nice word.
I think, Amy, why don't I ask you to articulate your concerns about zoning?
I think we've just done a really good job of resolving it, because we've taken out the revising the ordinances to
Right.
reflect what's in the affordable housing report.
Okay.
So I think we've just fixed it, as I can tell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
There was only one place in the comp plan that specifically addressed zoning. That was in the housing report. And the comp plan, as we all agree, really needs to be a broad-based general document. And because that was the only place that really recommended specific zoning ordinance changes, it seemed out of place. That's part of implementation, but then.
Yep.
Everybody feel comfortable with that, moving forward? Okay, I put something here on the agenda about member comments. George, you had some thoughts that you wanted to share with the group?
Sure. Before I get into that, can I ask the Affordable Housing Group a question? And I'm not trying to be controversial here, but looking for clarity. You, on the website, town's website, you have a questions and answers section. And number 7, someone asked the question, do the proposals allow attainable housing to be built on town-owned land? And in giant bold letters, no. And then the plan does not, again in bold letters, propose creating any special provisions to allow attainable housing on town-owned land, specifically Mitchell Field or Doughty. And then when I go to your document, page 13, land sourcing, it specifically says, oh, no, that's not what I'm looking for. Yes, it's still page 13, but it's at the top. Efforts to create attainable housing must be owned by the community. So can you clarify for me? Maybe I'm not understanding this, or those, to me, those contradict each other.
The point being made, okay, the point that, as best I understand is being made there, is that affordable housing that is privately owned in the same way that Hamilton Place was sold. It was developed as affordable housing and then sold to families, which doesn't allow it to continue to be affordable housing. When those places have sold, they've increased in prices. And so there needs to be a mechanism. That's what we're speaking about with regards to like community ownership. It's not town-owned land specifically that we're referencing there. It's that with ownership, as happened in Hamilton Place, we're basically drawing lessons from that project, which doesn't particularly provide as attainable housing as we would hope it would. So that does that?
Yeah, somewhat. I'm still a little bit confused that they contradict each other, but I understand where you went with the whole Hamilton Place thing.
Right, Bob.
It's a good question, George. What I understand the question to be is the working group saying we have to put affordable housing on these two, Dowdy Point and you say no. Doesn't say we can't or won't. It's just saying we are not saying it has to be there. And then the page 13 that you read. So what I understand it, the two of them to be saying is it's an open question. The preference is and the assumption is that whenever there is good affordable housing, it'll have to be public owned to prevent the privatization and prices, right?
Yeah, or there needs to be some mechanism to do that, like
And
deed
that-
restrictions and whatever. That's
But that could be public housing. So public ownership of the land is not ruled out.
I think that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So it leaves it open, and I think that's I think that's the modality we're in a lot of these things, exploring, and we're trying to leave things open to a process in the next 10 years. We're trying not to limit things or to be restrictive or directive.
Yeah.
Does that help? I don't know.
It does, yeah, and the ownership is also a big difference than renting. That and like you said, that escalates the price when someone moves on. That's understandable, and that creates an issue. That's another thing I'm hearing about rental properties is it's kind of like buying a rental car or a used car. Which one would you prefer, right? We know owned properties probably get maintained and treated better other than rental properties. But that is one concern I've heard from a lot of. So a lot of my comments have already been addressed, and I'm glad that we're starting to find some common ground. And I think we can work through this. The biggest challenge, obviously, I think we all realize, is that people don't like this language. They don't want it in the comprehensive. Unfortunately, the state mandates that we address it, and that word has been used several times today. And that was going to be my point, is that we address this issue, not necessarily come in with a sledgehammer. And I like that we're finally finding some common ground. I think we can work through this, but we have to put very specific language. I guess I wrote this down how I thought I should say it. first we need to restore the credibility of this committee, because we just, you know, people are not on board, and we need transparency, and I think we can do that by putting, you know, we need a section in that housing, a paragraph in there that says we need to address the state's concerns, but at the same time, we're going to put our community first. We, you know, the voters need to know that they're being heard. So that was part of what I had here, and I don't know the
Okay,
exact language that I used, but
poke you on that, George.
sure.
Transparency is a big issue with it.
Yeah. Well,
And I like, in the letter that you sent to the Anchor in February, I think there were some recommendations in there about surveys and things like that.
sure.
So, we have 6 months or more.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I want
No,
to,
we have less than that.
all right. How much time?
Oh, it would have to be ready at the beginning of September if we're gonna vote in,
April,
November.
May, June, July, August.
And that's leaving us with no time to make changes at the public hearing, so I think we should have it where we, this
Yes.
time we have the ability, if we hear pushback from the public, we have the ability to go back and revise
Okay,
it
so-
anyway.
You said a lot about transparency. You're saying about transparent. How do we make this process more transparent?
Well, that's what I'm trying to say about having a paragraph in the housing section that says, look, we heard you don't want this language in here. Unfortunately, the state mandates it to an extent.
When you say language, you're talking about just this.
Cluster housing, you know, even affordable housing, duplexes, cottages, and multi-unit townhouses on public properties. That's the stuff, people read that and they're like, nope, done. And so my very first comment was gonna be about the task at hand. And for us, we need to focus on the assignment, and you've addressed this already. We need to edit what we have to a point where the community will go along with it. That's our responsibility. Now, the challenge is meeting the state's requirements. So I think somewhere we have to have a very specific paragraph in the housing section that says, explains to the voters, we're going to do what we can, but we still have to have this language so that they understand that it has to be there. Again, use the word address and the type of communication that we've used where we are addressing the situation, we're not forcing the situation. That was well put, Bob. Thank you. So I think that's a path that can get us to where we want to be.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, George.
Don't ask me to write it.
That's what I was gonna do.
Similar to what we swallow with the federal flood hazard maps and digestion of you get it or you don't.
Do you want to have an argument about that today?
Don't go down that road.
Yeah, you know, so, and there again, and I hate to spend time somewhere else, but I asked for one little thing to be edited about the 200 square foot structures on the wharfs. We could have edited that, and this would be to bed. We'd be done, and now we're bringing it up. I'm talking to lawyers, state senators, lawyers that are telling me, you're going to have to call 50 states and get them to go along with that. I'm going, are you kidding me? They're suggesting taking portions of the buildings off and putting them on land, rebuild 50%, put the 50% back, rebuild that. And I'm thinking, wouldn't it have been a lot easier just to raise your hand at town meeting and go, nope, we're not doing that. We're going to take that sentence out. But then there again, it was hurried. It was this has to be done today or you know, in 4 days. And so, yeah, we've been given a unique situation here where we do have time to straighten this out, and hopefully we're going to find some common ground.
Okay, so I
we
think
can do it.
what you're suggesting is maybe something in there that explains the rationale.
That's the
Why-
transparency I'm talking about.
why
Like,
why need to address this. And by the way, I was looking around this afternoon. One of the arguments for a town to have a comprehensive plan, aside from the pie in the sky, you know, it unites people, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the cold hard facts is that there's $80 million of funding available for towns that have comprehensive plans now to do various things. That's something that people, I think, can identify with. So it makes sense for us to complete this process, to have something that's acceptable to the town, to the state, so that we can tap into, if we have to, if the town wants to, that kind of funding. And so there's a tangible reason for doing this, I think, above and beyond, you know, it's nice to do.
the advantages are here. There's 8 of them if you want to pass it around. I only made 1 copy. Yep.
You were thinking of putting this
Mm-hmm, I remember.
that's where you,
Yeah, well, somewhere in there, yeah. It was there at one time, and people said, no way. And then we turned it over to the housing committee, and they already had their plan. And I have another suggestion that, you're probably gonna run me out of here when I say it, but,
the trouble is we keep moving on to stuff.
Okay.
right, well, sure. It was there to start with.
Yeah, okay.
And then we removed it and we handed it off to them, and then it seemed like we were trying to hide it, so to speak. That's why I asked for the hyperlink to be put there, so that people could at least, you know, when they read it and they say, well, how do I know? At least you can click if you're online and it took you to the document.
I think we should let's read the first column here.
Yep.
Yeah, we can
That
edit.
first paragraph, a new sentence. Share what you've written if you don't want to.
No,
Share what you've written.
I really didn't write, I really didn't write a revision to that. That was my suggestion, was that language needs to be in there, so that when people read it, they say,
I'm trying to move this thing forward.
it's not, they can't,
We're gonna write it, let's write it as a group, I think
Yeah.
is what you're trying to say, Bob.
right?
Yeah,
I don't can write it as a group. I think somebody should volunteer, and if nobody else will do it, I'll do it. Take that paragraph and insert it in here for presentation.
I'd be
I will
fine
work
with
with
that.
George on it. I will work with George on it.
You wanna do it, the 3 of us? That's fine
Fine.
with me.
No, 2 of you.
Two is good.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay, so you two come up with something and we'll,
Class will come up with it.
we'll
and bring it.
work on
Yep.
putting it in there. Okay, great,
All right,
No, that's
I
fine.
cut you off.
That's fine.
great.
Yeah, the last thing, and it's pretty extreme, and this meeting has a very different tone than where I thought it was gonna go, but it could be an avenue, not a very popular one probably, but
probably not.
maybe the selectmen, the issue is here, the selectmen have accepted your document before accepting ours. It happened in the wrong order. And this isn't a good, I hate to say this, but maybe they need to revisit unaccepting your
Why?
document for now, until we hash this out and we get the comp plan completed. Because it's my understanding is that's the order it's supposed to be done in. And the town is now ripe for a lawsuit. Because if a builder comes along and says, hey, I'm reading your housing plan, you need some units built, then the town has to say, well, the town didn't really vote that in because it's not in our comprehensive plan. And then the builder can say, here's my attorney's number, he's calling. That's what my understanding is and what I've been told. Whether that's true or not, to an extent. And I don't, maybe we work together on these plans, get them so they're in unison. And then the selectmen can say, okay, now we have the comp plan and it fits that. That's our goal, right? To get it to pass.
And Amy can help me with this. It would seem to me the scenario that you mentioned about a builder coming to town, if it's in a report and it's not in the comp plan and it's not in the ordinance, I don't understand how that would be, how you would be sued. You know,
I'm not,
because it's
I'm
not in
an
the
attorney.
ordinance.
I've been, this is what I was told by
With
a
all due
former
respect to the
comprehensive
select
member.
board, what they decided doesn't matter that much.
No. Sorry.
Go ahead, Bob.
Okay, we were under mandate to get our report in by a certain date to make the public meeting or the annual meeting. And so we were pushed to make sure we made that deadline. I understand if we were supposed to be in unison, ours was supposed to go into you incorporate.
Extended.
We thought we were doing what we were supposed to do correctly. I do not believe the report as it stands today can be a legal document because it's not incorporated in the comp plan, so it is void at this point. I will not tell you I'm a lawyer.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But I don't think it's anywhere except for we've made a recommendation, select
Okay.
board then accept, but it's no man's land still. You're still on the 2005 comp plan. That's
correct.
right. We can't do anything yet. These are all, it's loaded.
Amy?
I think that this is a great conversation, and it's time that we had it. I think to a certain extent, we have a comedy of errors here. I completely understand why the Housing Committee felt it needed to move in the direction and in the time frame that it did. Unfortunately, I think that also contributed to the accusations of lack of transparency, because the housing report made some pretty strong recommendations that the public never had a chance to have a public hearing on and have public say on. And if it had, I think you would have gotten a lot of pushback, the same way that the comp plan got pushed back. But that's
We were
fine.
trying to do good.
Yeah.
And that was our intent.
Absolutely.
The downside is, abrupt, we got slapped and we tried to redo it again. That said, we think we have a document, should be able to move forward, and if we're here to work.
And I think that what we're doing today is, I think that addresses George's legal concerns too. Because as long as the housing report is not an official part of the comprehensive plan and its recommendations aren't there, I think we can move ahead toward implementation. And implementation is a whole other ballgame. But it is going to, the housing committee actually, when you guys first started, I thought did a really good job of involving the public in the discussion about how attainable housing should move forward. You had great visuals, you had good meetings, you made it very easy for people to contribute their thoughts to the process. And I applauded that early on. And I think implementation is going to have to take that kind of strategy and put it on steroids. And there's no reason that we can't do that.
Hey, Sean?
I just want to clarify that the Affordable Housing Working Group and the Housing Committee are two separate things. That was done by the working, just for clarification.
Okay.
So let me get this straight.
Yeah,
Are you saying that we ought to eliminate the report by the Affordable Housing Working Group from the comp plan?
I think
I mean, we've talked about this before. I mean, I always looked at it as a valuable
It's valuable.
reference. A lot of work was done. Why don't we incorporate some of that? Much like if you went to the other committees in the town and said, you know, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? the town doesn't necessarily have to vote on what we hear from these committees, but we take inputs from the committees and factor that into the process here, much like what we're doing here with the working group report. I always thought that was a valuable reference that we could use. Are you saying that we need to eliminate that because it wasn't approved as a town report?
You want a guaranteed pass? We could vote on that tomorrow and it would pass. But I don't think that's necessary. It would be great from the crowd that's in my ear, but I think if we address the fact that the state requires this language, that should be sufficient enough. I know there's people that would like to see it removed from the comp plan, but
You and Amy are going to write that sentence together.
we're gonna figure it
All
out
right,
somehow.
figure that out, and, okay.
The housing report is like census data. If we treat it like, these are traffic counts from MDOT. They're in the appendix, referenced in the appendix. It's information. That's.
Okay, so let me throw some mud in the game. 2019 Mitchell Field report. That's an official report.
They're on the hook as well.
What's in that report?
Same thing. Same thing.
There's a conceptual design for cluster housing
Yep,
in the 2019 Mitchell Field report, which was approved by the town.
you're absolutely right.
So,
And
And so,
it's not popular.
yeah,
But those reports do not determine this vision.
No.
it doesn't determine the vision, but in my mind, if you eliminate one, that is saying somewhat the same thing, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
I think the Mitchell Field report has been updated.
No, it hasn't.
Well, it hasn't been updated and passed as a master plan.
So it's not been updated.
But it's been updated, and in the same way that the select board looked at the housing report, it's looked at Mitchell Field issues. So I think if we can put them in as reference material, not mention them and not use them as directives for policies, goals, and objectives and strategies, that we'll be doing fine. That's how I feel.
We've got plenty of time. We could try that first.
All right.
And then if it's rejected because of the same, if they come and say, this is the same thing where we start, then maybe we do have to remove, but
Okay.
hopefully not.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, we can't just keep removing because,
We can,
Select-
Mary Ann, as long as we meet the state's requirements.
I'm sorry, but it's not just to meet the state requirements. The plan contains a lot of information that has to do really with the natural environment. There's a lot of things in there. And I can imagine that there's a group of people that really aren't too comfortable with it. If I hear what you're saying about this, but I don't think we can keep pulling stuff out to get the plan passed. And maybe this is just the maybe this is one or two things that we're talking about now. But I can see something coming up the next time that maybe you don't like what it says about water. Maybe you don't like what it says about septic. We're going to have nothing when we get done.
I mean,
So,
the
you know-
reports ought to support what we're saying in the plan.
And we're not making ordinances, we're saying we want to check these further because they are a concern for people in town and they would like to have it addressed in more detail.
Okay, so let's leave it at this. You guys will work out some language. I want to talk about my concept of how things are going to work in the next 6 months. And first of all, I've been approached by the chair of the Technology Committee to not meet. We have typically been meeting twice a month on the second and fourth Tuesdays of the month. I propose that the next time we meet is the 22nd of April, which is the fourth Tuesday of the month. I think at that time, maybe we can get some language recommendations. But then I'm looking forward to November 4th, which is the time that we have to vote. This vote is going to be a secret ballot. It's going to be in conjunction with the elections that are going on in the state. It's going to be, at the school. Oh, no. So we're going to have a public hearing at least 30 days before.
It has to be 60 because the absentee ballots go out 30 days before.
Okay, 60 days. So we're talking September, August, September. September, maybe you're on the first week in September, 60 days for a public hearing. And that's when we trot out all of these recommended changes and make sure that all of the changes are online and so on and so forth. So then we have the time between now and September. What can we do in those months to help us close the loop here? Yes, sir. So you,
I think when
Surely did,
yeah,
smarter.
exactly.
yeah, and unfortunately,
Right.
we were forced
So this is
into
your
that situation.
opportunity. Get us together. Get faster. Let's
At least.
So you're saying have a public hearing in August sometime?
July.
We do not have
Right.
Right.
4 months.
Yes.
I think we can get this work done relatively quickly.
Yeah.
I think the other important thing we should do, Al,
Let it
is
sit here.
these changes
I'd
that we
suggest
make,
a
maybe make a
Dropbox.
list, like remove goal 4, remove
Yeah,
goal
and a
7. So then when
town
we go to
website.
that public hearing, we can
Yeah.
list the changes that were made.
Yes.
And then that will give the public some more credibility and confidence in us, and we can say we changed X, Y, Z, and they can go to page whatever it was, and see that that's removed, I think that was a lot of people who were trying to figure out what we changed between the first one and the last one. We're having a hard time figuring it out.
Okay, so if we were to put articles in the Anchor saying we're going to remove this, we're going to remove that, and then reflect that in our online.
I don't even know if we have to necessarily use the anchor. I think when we hold the public hearing, that can be kind of our introduction.
Well,
to the
I want to be
hearing.
doubly sure.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Could we have
I'd like to see the
online
information.
as track
I'm sorry.
changes?
That's a good
So they
idea.
could look at
Okay,
it and
online
say,
track
that's
changes.
been crossed out,
Okay.
and this other stuff has been.
Yeah, maybe make turn it red or something,
Yep.
or put a line through it.
All right.
So they
Make
can see
another
what it was, but see that it was removed. That's a
Yeah,
real good
and
idea.
changed.
Yep.
I also suggest, Al, that George and Matt be involved in passing information. That you, as the chair, are the chair, but I really think we need some other voices who are saying, these are the changes that have been made, and we support these changes, because there are a lot of people that listen to these two folks.
Yep.
And there are more people that listen to them than listen to you. I don't mean to say that disparagingly, but I think that's the truth. So we need
I would
to
agree with that.
get some other voices.
So we can blame them if it doesn't happen.
I see, yeah, thank
That's
you.
it, that's it.
Exactly.
Yeah, just interesting, the morning of the last, the 22nd, I dropped by the dump to unload some things before I went to the meeting. And I was overhearing a conversation. Donette, who works at the dump, was saying, you know, are you going to go to the town meeting today? And the person that was there saying, what town meeting? What are you talking about?